Välkommen till det här fjärde webbinariet i serien Design för bättre hälsa. Patienter och brukare som aktiva medskapare. Det är ett samarbete mellan Sveriges kommuner och landsting och SWED. Welcome everybody to the fourth webinar in a series of 8 that is produced in collaboration between Swedish Association of Local Authorities and Regions and Swedish Industrial Design Foundation. My name is Marie Pernebring and I work with SKLA, and with us but not in picture is Jonas Gumbel, who is working with SWED, the Swedish Industrial Design Foundation. The name of this series is Design for Better Health, Patients and Users as Active Co-Producers. This webinar is called CHESS, a support system for patients made by patients. And as our very, very honored guest and speaker this afternoon in Sweden, this morning at your place, David Gustafson. We will just in a minute let him do his presentation for us, but I'll tell you something about the things that we're going to experience. After David's presentation, I will let Katarina Wetter-Edman be the first one to put some questions. Katarina is a PhD student of service design in University of Karlstad. Så när vi har låtit David hålla sitt anförande så kommer den första personen som får möjlighet att ställa frågor att vara Katarina Wetter-Edman, som är doktorand på universitetet i Karlstad i service design. Efter det så kommer vi låta alla er andra vara med och ställa frågor. Och om ni inte tycker att det är bekvämt att ställa frågor på engelska så får ni gärna fråga i vårt chattrum på svenska. Och så kommer Jonas Gumbel att hjälpa oss att översätta så att vi kan förmedla frågorna till David. If you don't find it easy to write in English, you can write in Swedish and Jonas will help us to translate. And we would like you to take part in our chat room. We know that most of you who are following this webinar are very interested in questions of design for health or co-produced patients as co-producers. You could also, if you want to, Twitter, and you can see the hashtag DesignFBH that you, in that case, is supposed to use. And now, David, I give the floor to you, and we are very excited about your presentations. So welcome to Sweden.
Thank you very much. I appreciate the opportunity to spend some time with you folks. I wish I was there rather than here. It sounds like it's a beautiful day. What I would like to do is to give you an overview of a system that we have been developing and testing for really quite some time. As a matter of fact, probably our first adventures into the area of using computers to help people deal with problems that they're suffering occurred in 1973 when we developed an equation to predict whether a person who was complaining of suicidal thoughts would actually make a serious attempt on their life. And we developed the equation, but then we needed to collect some data to put into the equation. And we thought, well, why don't we see what happens if we collect that data by computer? And so you can imagine back then the interface, or the way in which the computer screen looked, was pretty primitive. But even in that primitive state, we found that these patients preferred to talk to a computer over talking to another human being. And that was our start. Over the years, we have then carried out a number of research studies in this area. Probably in the, what I might say in the early 80s, we developed a system called BARN, which meant the Body Awareness Resource Network. And it was to help teenagers deal with issues of smoking and sex and stress and diet and activity and alcohol and drug abuse and things like that. And it was pretty successful. It ended up in around 2,100 schools in the United States and was proven to be pretty effective, but not effective in the way in which we intended. We had designed the system to prevent teenagers from getting into trouble, and we found that we were completely unsuccessful in preventing that. But to our surprise, if a person was already engaged in one of those risk behaviors, they used BARN, our computer system, extensively, and outcomes changed. And so that led us to a transition away from trying to use these systems for prevention into an effort to try to use them to help people who were struggling with, already struggling with a disease of some significance. And it's that transition from there on out that I want to talk with you about today. The platform for our work has been evolving and changing over, well, in all those years, so that what we developed in the early days is very different from what we have now, but the system is still called CHESS, which stands for the Comprehensive Health Enhancement Support System. In this presentation, I'm going to focus on addiction, but we have developed and carried out tests in a number of different areas. Some of those tests I will describe during the presentation. Others I will not go into, but suffice it to say for the time being that we have developed work in HIV, in breast cancer, prostate cancer, lung cancer, bone marrow transplant for kids with serious cancers that need bone marrow transplant. We've also done programs in adult children of alcoholics and depression, in asthma and areas of that type. And our typical approach to things is to carry out research. We're not very good at disseminating the products we've developed, but our focus has been on research. And forgive me, but in a minute I think I'm going to sneeze. Let's see here. Whoops. Yeah, there we go. Excuse me. Our systems are developed around what is called the self-determination theory. This is a theory that basically says if you want to improve things, you need to accomplish it by attacking 3 different issues. And the 3 issues are improving the person's ability to cope, giving them the skills, the knowledge, the tools to be able to cope with the stressors that they're facing in life. The second is you need to give them a way in which they can obtain support and give support to people who are going through the same thing they are. And then the third thing is helping them build their autonomous motivation so that their decisions to go ahead come from within rather than from somebody else. And so it's this coping competence, social relatedness, and autonomous motivation that CHESS is built around. Now, Dan, if we can have the video played, I'd appreciate it. Thank you.
At the Center for Health Enhancement System Studies at UW-Madison, we've developed and tested a mobile app to provide continuing care for patients leaving addiction treatment. It's called HS. HS is designed to identify key moments that may lead to relapse and provide custom support to prevent it. HS includes immediate automated options such as relaxation audio, recovery motivation reminders, and the ability to share and listen to personal stories. HS allows the user to engage a peer network. Users can interact with each other using private messages and discussion groups. They can coordinate real-world activities using the events feature, which includes the ability to rate items, comment, and even invite other HS users to attend. Clinicians can use their HS web portal to check up on patients. They see weekly survey data that tracks recovery strength. They can set up thresholds for individual patients so that they receive email alerts when support is needed. Now let's have a look at an example of how HS can be used in the real world. In the very back seat of the number 12 bus, only Jeremy's eyes were moving as he scanned the shadows outside, his forehead pressed up against the glass. He had missed his stop. It was 1:30 in the morning, and when the bus had approached his street, he had imagined lifting his arm up to pull the cord. He had imagined himself walking up the stairs to his crappy little apartment. He had imagined himself flop into his grubby, sunken couch and pull his tiny TV close enough to watch. But he hadn't pulled the cord. He was motionless, with a tiny spark of excitement and a tiny spark of nausea circling like flies in his stomach. The park 10 minutes ahead, on the number 12 line, is where he used to score. He could feel it getting closer, though he couldn't see it. He had no intention of getting off the bus at the park. He just wanted to drift by and catch a glimpse. He was shaken out of his trance when his cell phone went off. He recognized the ringtone right away. HS. Jeremy always responded when the HS alert went off. He didn't want to miss out on an easy $10 which his counselor would give him for each week he didn't miss a response. HS was an app on his phone that his counselor, Brenda, had set up for him during his last week of inpatient treatment. Brenda had tailored HS to Jeremy's specific needs by asking him a series of questions about where and when he used to use and what his triggers were. HS knew that Jeremy was a night owl, and oftentimes the application would check in with him at night to see how he was doing, and sometimes suggest he listen to some guided relaxation, or maybe suggest a meeting for him to attend the next day, if he hadn't been to one in a while. Jeremy had already received a check-in from HS at 11, but now his phone was vibrating because the system had detected that he was near one of his high-risk locations. After Jeremy answered a few brief questions about how he was feeling, HS presented Jeremy with some suggestions based on his answers. The system had determined that it was important that Jeremy have a video call with an on-call counselor right away. Jeremy didn't think that was necessary. But when he tapped on the ignore button, HS played a video of himself talking about his life prior to treatment. Jeremy sat back in his seat and thought about it for a minute. I cannot afford to be that guy again, he thought. He reconsidered and tapped on connect. Jeremy looked around. The bus had passed the park, and he was heading back west. I'm the only one in here, he thought. It shouldn't be so bad. He sat up a little straighter and positioned the phone in front of him. Within a minute, he was talking face to face with his counselor, Brenda. We've tested HS in various settings, and the results have been exciting. In a randomized clinical trial, a group that got HS had 57% fewer risky drinking days than the control group. In a VA study, HS was part of a new treatment program provided to vets that had suffered multiple readmissions. 44 vets had 80% fewer readmissions after receiving HS. Our data indicate that HS has tremendous potential to improve outcomes and reduce cost of care.
Production to some of the things that happen with HS, addiction chess. And as you can see on this particular screen, there are actually 17 different services that are available to users of the HS system. And they break down into 6 different categories. Going from the top to the bottom, they start with providing social support or social relatedness, as mentioned in the theory, and that includes a variety of things, including bulletin board discussion groups, live chat, and a thing that we call the panic button, where at any point if a person is having a lot of difficulty, they simply press the panic button and a number of things happen. The first thing that happens is that when they first begin to use HS, they identify people who can be and agree to be their supporters. If the panic button is pushed, the HS system looks to see if one of those supporters is physically nearby, and then will contact that person and indicate that I'm having troubles or things like that. It also gives you access to HS also gives you access to various services such as games or relaxation tapes or things of that type. I'm not going to go through all of the different services, but in the virtual counseling area, we offer video conferencing for people who want to use the system for that purpose. We also offer various ways in which the counselor can stay in contact with the patient, things like that. And we use various capabilities of the system, such as the location tracker, to identify if a person is nearby a location where they had previously, for instance, spent a lot of time drinking. And that notification will be sent out to begin to initiate a sort of a ever-increasing rescue program, and various other things, alerts, reminders, and those kind of things. Just a little bit of more detail about the studies that we've done. The randomized trial that was mentioned on the audio, or the video really, was one that involved 349 people who were in residential treatment for suffering with a primary diagnosis of alcohol problems. And about a week before they were discharged from residential treatment, they were asked if they would like to participate in this study. One surprising thing was that there were 367 people who were invited to participate. 349 of them agreed to participate, so only 18 people turned us down. They had HS for 8 months, and then we also watched what happened over the next 4 months. And one of the things that we looked at was 30-day abstinence. That is, we would call the person and collect data about whether they had had any drink at all in the last 30 days. And this bar chart shows that there was significant reduction of about 20-some% in the number of people who were not abstinent, or put it another way, a 20% increase in people who were abstinent. But the powerful effect was the one mentioned on the video, and that is that the heavy drinking days among people who had access to HS was 57% less on average than the patients who did not have access to HS. The red bar here is the control group, and you can see that the number of heavy drinking days per month is much higher than the group that had access to HS. So that is an important thing. Another important thing to note is, remember, we took the phone away at the end of 8 months, and still at 12 months there was a growing differential between the HS group and the control group. So it had a lasting effect on their behavior. One of the other things that we looked at was we assumed that, you know, if this system were really the cause of the improvement, then we would expect to see that the more a person used the system, the fewer risky drinking days they had. And so on the bottom here is the cumulative number of pages viewed, and on the going up and down is the number of risky drinking days. And as you can see, there is a direct relationship. The more a person used the system, the fewer risky drinking days they had. So that was very encouraging to us. In another study that we carried out, we examined the what happened if we were to give HS bundled with two other services. One, Vivitrol, which is a long-acting drug that reduces cravings, and also face-to-face support groups. And we looked at people who had at 44 people who in the 18 months prior to receiving HS and the other services had a large number of readmissions. And then we looked 18 months later to see what happened to those people, and there was about an 80% reduction in readmissions, which is enormous cost savings for, in this particular case, the Veterans Administration. Let's see here. There we go. So just to point out some of the key distinguishing features of HS. One is that it allows, HS links to some electronic medical records. So that information that is collected by HS, for instance, collecting how they're doing on sleeplessness or how they're doing on relationships, which are collected each week, that information can be input directly into the electronic health record, and information in the electronic health record can also be pulled out. The second distinguishing feature is that the system is designed specifically for the smartphone, and as a result of it, it can take advantage of things like GPS and like the camera, et cetera, which are less possible to do if a system is designed just for the web. Third thing is that built into the model is a Bayesian, which is a form of statistics, a statistical model that pretty accurately predicts whether a person is going to relapse within the next week. Its false positive rate, that is predicting a relapse when it isn't going to really occur, you want to have that as small as possible, and it runs about 10%. And the false negative rate, that is missing people who are going to relapse, is about 25%. And so we're 75% accurate in predicting relapse and 90% accurate in predicting non-relapse. And that model is used to indicate that a contact needs to be made with the patient. So if somebody is predicted to relapse, then the computer notifies the counselor, and they go from there. It's an assertive outreach system, which means it doesn't wait for the patient to turn the system on. Once a day, the system will call them and ask, do you think you can make it through the day without drinking? Sometimes we call them as many as 6 times a day. And then once a week, we'll call them also. So the system it doesn't wait for the patient to turn it on. It's designed to sustain use, and so as a result of that, what we're finding is that people after 8 months, about 60% of the people who were first put onto HS are still using it, which is a very high percentage rate. You get access to advice 24 hours a day, and the system is quite secure. I think it's important, however, to mention our research in a couple of other areas. One of them here is a small pilot study. So all we can do is say is suggest that there may be real differences, but we need to carry out a much larger study than this. In any case, in this particular study, we took adult children of alcoholics, and we randomly assigned them to 3 groups. One group got group psychotherapy alone for 10 weeks. The next group got chess alone, that's the red group, for 10 weeks. And then the third group got chess plus group psychotherapy for 10 weeks. And at the end of that 10 weeks, we looked to see what changes took place in the patients. The box on the bottom, on the left-hand side, was a big surprise to us. As a matter of fact, we didn't even intend to look at this. We just happened to. We found that the average attendance at a group psychotherapy session was 37%. But if you added chess to group psychotherapy, so the communication between the group could continue in between the face-to-face sessions, the average attendance at the group psychotherapy session went up to 83%. But you'll also notice on the bar that some interesting things occurred in terms of outcomes. We looked at 6 different outcomes: nervousness, isolation, depression, self-esteem, support, and life satisfaction. Anything to the left of the midline means that the person got worse on those dimensions. Anything to the right of the midline indicates that the person got better. You notice that group psychotherapy alone led to a reduction in nervousness, no real impact on feelings of isolation, a little bit more depressed, a little bit greater loss of self-esteem, a little bit greater loss of feelings of support, and probably I'd say a substantial reduction in life satisfaction. That was for the group that got group psychotherapy alone. On the chest side, you can see that there was an improvement in all dimensions. And on the chest plus group psychotherapy side, you can see that there was an improvement in all dimensions except nervousness, where things actually got worse. In another study, we compared chess to patients who didn't have it, who were HIV infected. And the left-hand picture shows that the chess group had less hospitalizations, and the right-hand picture shows that if a person was hospitalized for an HIV-related condition, their length of stay, the time they spent in the hospital, was less. So that was encouraging because it suggested that there was some cost savings potential associated with the access to chess. One particularly interesting study that was completed a couple of years ago was one where we didn't give the program to the patient. They could get access to it, but the real focus of the program was on the caregiver, the family caregiver of a lung cancer patient. And in this particular case, what would happen is the program would begin by teaching them about teaching the caregiver about lung cancer, what it is, teaching them how to be a better caregiver, collecting data on how the patient was doing, and if the patient wasn't doing well, automatically send a notification to the physician, and also allowing the caregivers to talk to other people. And we found some very interesting results. One of them was that the patients that were given access to to lung cancer chess, the patients whose family caregiver were given access to lung cancer chess actually lived longer by 35% after diagnosis than the patients who didn't have access to chess. And so it actually lengthened life more than any kind of medication or other intervention has had for lung cancer. So that was very encouraging. But another thing that was important was, you'll remember I said that the caregiver was asked how the patient was doing once a week on 10 different dimensions, such as their bowel movements, their pain, their nausea, their shortness of breath, and things of that particular type. And if a patient was was getting worse and went beyond a threshold. So for instance, if a patient hadn't had a bowel movement in the last 3 days, then CHESS contacted the clinical team. And what we found was a significant reduction in the time it took for patients' symptoms to improve, and significant improvement in those symptoms. And so that link to the clinical team was very, very important. Now, there's a lot of different research studies that have gone on around the CHESS system. As a matter of fact, there are probably over 140 studies that have been published in the literature, and so I don't know whether these slides are going to be shared with you in paper format or not, but if they are, you'll see a lot of references that you can go to. So that's the end of my presentation, and I guess now I'll look forward to answering any questions you may have. Probably need to turn on your microphone. One question was, how do you continue the development of the system? How fast are cycles to develop a new function? The system is a continually evolving one where we engage the patients and family caregivers in the continued improvement of the system. So for instance, one of the things that happens is we have a tips section, TIPS, tips section, where people can share things. For instance, there was a discussion among caregivers of older patients with Alzheimer's disease. And one person was saying that they were having trouble finding enough money to get diapers for their wife. And this other person got on, and I'm not proud of the answer, because in the United States healthcare system, we don't cover some of these costs as well as we should. But another person got on and said, well, what I do is I put towels under her, and every night, every morning, I take them out and I wash them. And then a third person came on and said, well, do you know that down on such and such a road in this town right now, there is a sale going on disposable diapers, a really deeply discounted sale. And so those kinds of things continue on in the discussion groups, and that and useful tips are placed into a section where people can continue to add and comment on those. So that's one way in which it continually evolves. Another thing that we do is we also collect a lot of information that if a new development occurs in a particular arena, if there's something of clinical importance, then that information will be put on the system. Then annually we go back and we look at all the information that we have in the system to make sure that it's up to date. And so that's how we do that. So that's how we continue our development.
Okay, let's see if Katarina can hear me now. Can you?
I can hear you.
So then, please, Katarina, you got any comments or any questions?
Thank you. And thank you, David, for sharing this. It's a wonderful work and very interesting to hear about all the improvements and the results you get from this work. It's amazing. I was also in the same area about how did you develop this in the first place? How did you get what kind of features this first chess version or the chess versions, what they should be, because there is a complex net of different services that are in there. How did you get there?
Yes, that's a very good question, Katarina, as all of these are that are coming up. The way we got started in chess and the way we moved away from the teenagers was that my wife was diagnosed with breast cancer, and I was pretty unhappy with the care that she had gotten. And the surgeon there, who was a good friend of mine, was unhappy as well. And so we decided that we were going to try to do something about that, and we started interviewing patients, and we didn't ask them what they needed. We asked them questions like, what's it like to be a woman with breast cancer? And from that came a list of potential needs. And then we sent out a survey to about 150 women with breast cancer and asked them to indicate how important these various needs were to them. So we then had a priority thing. Then what we did was we held, which was probably one of the more definitive meetings of my life. We identified a series of women who were considered to be very creative and thoughtful, and who had breast cancer. And we brought them together and we said, okay, we of course don't know how to cure this disease. You may very well be cured by existing medical services, but there isn't anything we particularly can do about it. But suppose we were to give you all the money in the world to do anything you wanted to about breast cancer for yourself. How would you spend that money? And one woman said, what I would like is I would like to have a semi-truck trailer with all the literature in breast cancer drive up to my yard and be parked there. And all the literature inside would be converted over to things that I could understand, in a way that I could understand. And then another person said, well, I've got an extra bedroom in my house, and I would like my personal oncologist to move in there and be available to talk to me at any time. Then another person said, well, actually, what I'd like to do is I'd like to go to a resort and live there for a while, and at that resort have women who were just like me that I could talk to at any time about the struggles that I'm having. And they went through and went through and went through. And so from the semi-truck trailer came our instant library, where we put a lot of information about breast cancer on the computer and did some translation of that kind of stuff to make it understandable. From the personal oncologist idea came our Ask an Expert program, where you could write messages and get back answers in 24 hours. And from the, talking to other women with breast cancer, that's where our discussion group came from. And so a lot of the services that we initially put on to the system came from that one meeting. And so it was really powerful, the idea of telling people, set aside all of the different constraints that you have. tell us in the ideal world what you would look like, what you would like to have, and then we'll sit down and say, how close can we come to giving you exactly what you need? And that transition of those, the semi-truck trailer over to the instant library was something that we as a group of technologists did once we understood ideally where we wanted those people to go.
Did you at any point during that process involve these women or other women again for feedback or testing or prototyping of these various services, or how did that proceed before launch, from the women to the technologist and then back again?
Yes, well, we did a number of different things. One of the other things that we did was a social worker that one of the staff here thought highly of had been diagnosed with a pretty significant form of breast cancer, which she, by the way, is even today doing just fine with. But we hired her full time to work with us and coordinate the activities. Then we had a number of women with breast cancer that we had identified in various ways, and they were used to help us prototype. They looked at the things in paper and gave us some ideas on how to make them better and that kind of stuff. And then we had another set to test the system. And one of the final things that we've done now is we have a rating system built in to CHESS, so that the information, you can click a star rating from 1 to 5, and so we know what kinds of things people like and don't like. At least we think we're getting some information about that, and so that allows us to clarify things and replace them. So we really do try to involve the patients as much as possible.
Have you made any significant changes to the system after the launch, or for example during the 8-month period you talked about by the addiction HS version? Did you do any change during that period, or does that become contradictory to research purposes?
Yeah, that's another interesting thing, because researchers sort of say, well, you can't change something because it's a thing you're testing, and you've got to be able to test it. Yet even the first developers of the web said that not in these words, but said it's crazy to think of these systems as being a fixed entity that never changes. Of course, the essence of these kinds of technology is that they continue to evolve over time. And I guess I'm a little bit on the stubborn side, and so when people said, well, you can't change this thing, I said, I don't care. I mean, that's not the way this thing works. We're going to evaluate a living system. We aren't going to evaluate something that doesn't reflect reality. And so, yes, it continues. And there are some people that criticize that. That's all right. I'm too old to care.
Thank you very much. I think that was my questions and comments, and I'll let the word move on. Thank you very much.
Okay, Katarina, for the time being, you're welcome back. We've got one Eva Westerling. She has been asking a few questions. One is, are you planning in a new field for a new diagnosis? Another is this kind of system used in other countries than the United States? And then I think her last question is very interesting. You can today find so much information in the internet. Do patients tell you that it's enough, that you don't have to do these things anymore because they can find it anyway? Or do you think that the combination of different services that you put together is the thing that makes CHESS so good? These were the three questions from Eva.
And so I've got two of them. What new topics, and then the internet question. What was the middle question?
Is the CHESS system or something similar spread to other countries as well?
Oh yes, okay. The answer on the other countries side of the fence is that it looks like the addiction system is about ready to be spread to New Zealand, Australia, Canada, and the European and the United Kingdom. But that's probably overstating it. It isn't about to be. We're in discussions with a group that that is interested in doing so. There's been nothing signed. It may never happen, but we're in discussions with them. As far as new topics are concerned, one of the areas we're moving into now, we have a big activity going on right now to develop computer systems to help elderly people stay active in their life, and so it is aimed at 5 different things. One is reducing falls. Another is reducing loneliness and isolation. Another one is to reduce medication, adverse effects of medication. Another one is to help caregivers reduce caregiver burnout. And then the last one is driving, and they're one of the most common causes of accidents among elderly people in the United States is left-hand turns. My guess it's probably true in Sweden also. And so one of the things that we're trying to do is to use the technology to prevent left-hand turns. So one of the things that we're doing, for instance, is putting a sensor in automobiles that does a couple of things. Number one, it looks to see if a left-hand turn is coming and another car is coming in the opposite direction. It'll prevent the left-hand turn. The second thing that it does is if the person wishes to, it allows a video to be taken of the driving, and it uses accelerometers to detect whether a person is driving fast and stopping fast and turning quickly and things of that particular type. In the loneliness and isolation area, we're developing a system that allows people to not only talk to each other, but identify activities that are going on in the community, and to find people who are also going to that so that they can either share rides or go together or things of that particular type. In falls prevention, we're doing things like helping a person assess the safety of their home, and doing a video kind of guidance through the home that will allow them to detect hazards and how to change them and that kind of stuff. In the caregiver thing, we're monitoring how well the person is doing and sharing that information with the caregiver, but also monitoring how good their home care services from other people are, and giving that information. So we're doing a lot of stuff that is not related to a specific disease per se, but we are trying to help the person stay more active. And then the second area that we're
go on, David. Go on.
Okay, and then the second area that we're going into now is multiple chronic conditions, because very often if a person has one problem and they're getting older, they're going to have several problems. And so what we're doing is trying to find a way in which we can put together a system that addresses the behavioral aspects that are common in almost all chronic conditions. So, for instance, nutrition, exercise, stress, anxiety, those kind of things, and deal with those underlying causes to try to help people deal with many different kinds of chronic conditions. So those are the two areas. And then as far as the internet is concerned, we did a randomized trial back in 2005, where we randomly assigned people to get nothing. These were breast cancer patients. Get no support, get the access to the internet with even recommendations of high quality internet sites and get access to to breast cancer tests. We studied that randomized trial of about 200 women, and actually it was closer to 300. And we found that the internet, there was no difference between the internet and the control group at all, except in some cases the internet patients got more anxious, more uncertain, and things like that. Chess was superior to both the internet and the control group, and that was the case even 3 months after chess was removed. So that's 2005, it's now 2013. And so that's 8 years ago. Things may have changed, but when you have so much information coming at you from so many different kinds of sources saying so many different conflicting things, it can be problematic. And so that problem is still there.
May I go back to the things that you're working on when it comes to elderly people? When making a system for breast cancer patients or other groups of patients, it's obviously that you can go to their doctors, and through the doctors you can offer them these services. When it comes to elderly people, how are you going to get in contact with the people that need the new system?
Yes, there are a number of different ways that we're using. In the United States, we have a program called Aging and Disability Resource Centers that are located, for instance, in Wisconsin. We have 52 of them in our state of 5 million people. And people can call up, and what they do is they act as connectors. They don't provide service, but they'll say, oh, you need a nursing home? Well, here is some information about how you can tell the difference between a good and a bad home, and here are the various homes, things like that. They play a key role in referring people to HS. In addition to that, there are whoops, hold on just a second. I have to get back out. There we go. In addition to that, the managed care organizations in the United States, and these are organizations that get paid a fixed amount of money to provide whatever care the patient needs. They see this as a money-saving opportunity, and so they will identify their high-risk elderly people and then refer them to CHESS. And there are other ways in which we can do it that are unique to individual communities, such as in a rural area there happens to be a radio station that a lot of elderly people listen to. And so we're continually having programs and discussions about CHESS coming on there. So.
You have mentioned two different reasons for your work. One is saving money, the other one is giving people a better life quality. Is there a third reason for your work?
Well, this is, I think, probably not the answer that you are looking for, but it is an important answer. Throughout my whole career, I've built my research around my family. So when I was a father of a teenager, and frankly, I probably wasn't all that great, my wife came home one day and said, David, guess what? You're now going to be head of the youth group at church. And so you're going to have to find a way of taking care of 20 kids between the ages of between 5th grade and, and so I was scared to death. But I also wanted to be a better father. And so I felt that maybe what I could do is use the research that we were doing to become a better parent. And then when my wife got breast cancer, I was dissatisfied with the service, so I went on and did that. Then when we had grandchildren who were getting real young, I was scared about drugs and and so on. So I've always built my research around my life.
Okay. So that's your family is one of your driving forces. Jonas has put a few questions that might be a way of making some sort of putting the bag together now. He says, you mentioned that dissemination was not your best activity. What actions might there be to improve the verbal and visual presentation of information?
Say it one more time. You cut out a couple of times there.
Jonas says, you, David, mentioned that dissemination was not your best activity. What actions might there be to improve the verbal and visual presentation of information?
That's a good question. I think that the area of data visualization is really coming on strong now, and that is basically how you present information in pictorial ways that communicate very effectively. And so one of the areas where that is particularly showing up, and we're working on now in the dictionary, is with what we call dashboards, which are vehicles for summarizing in graphic form the key indicators that you might be interested in. So when we collect data on how an alcoholic is doing, we actually ask them 10 questions each week about things like relationships and cravings and things like that. And so what we're doing is we're looking at improving the pictures that appear on a screen so that somebody can get a very quick picture not only of how that particular patient is doing, but how they're doing in comparison to a population of other alcoholics. And so that's one thing. I think that another problem with dissemination comes back to my own weakness, and that is that I'm a researcher, and I'm not a salesperson, and I'm a salesperson because I sell to get grants, but I'm not a salesperson in the traditional sense of the word. And so I just don't stress that, and we haven't put forth a big effort. So those are two answers.
Okay, thank you. And now maybe a good question to make a conclusion with, also from Jonas Gumbel. How can we use chess in Sweden?
Well, that's another one that I would love to have a further conversation with. I'd be more than happy to get into discussions with people who would be interested in doing something like that. The system is available. There are the way in which we're currently, right at this very moment, disseminating is we have a research consortia where we have now, I think, somewhere around 14 different organizations, all of them in the United States, who have come together. Each organization is implementing HS in their own community, but they meet on a weekly basis to figure out problems and struggles that they're having and things like that. And so there is a fee to join that. The fee is 10. What would it be? Well, anyway, in the United States dollars, it's $10,000 a year for an organization, and they can use it for as many patients as they want. Okay. As far as other chess programs are concerned, that's certainly available too.
We've got another couple of questions coming in on costs. Eva is asking, who is financing chess? Is this the clinic where the patient is a patient? And there is Anita Edvinsson asking, are there any costs for the patients for using chess?
We don't charge anything to the patients for access to chess. The costs that I've just mentioned are costs that allow us to continue to have staff to update and improve HS. We aren't a for-profit organization, we're a university, and so all of the money, and the university has been kind enough to allow us to have all of the money go back to CHEST, so we don't pay any overhead or anything like that. It's strictly payments that allow us to have staff to support the implementation, answer questions, bring people together to talk, or to actually make improvements in the system.
That's a grand university you're working for, I must say.
Yeah, well, I don't know how long that'll stay, but as long as they're letting us do that, yes, absolutely.
Good. David, now we want to thank you very much for sharing all this wisdom and experience with us. And I also want to thank Katarina, who came in with the first questions, and Jonas, who's been monitoring the rest of the questions. So thank you very much, David, and I hope maybe this could be the start of having yet another dialogue about what could we do to get some of your chess experience and systems over to our country and use them in another language. So thank you again.
Thank you.
And thank everybody else who's been following us. And don't forget the next webinar within 2 weeks, and we'll have a very, very exciting experience with people from Australia, family by family, also a system made by users, for users. So welcome on the 16th of October. In the morning then. Goodbye.